Magandang umaga po sa inyong lahat. Siguro marami sa inyo alam yung Facebook group na Classic TITOS and TITAS of Manila. It is very Filipino. Very Filipino because kahit dito siguro sa crowd natin ngayon, sa congregation natin ngayon, marami sa atin ang nakaagwanta. I don't know kung naintindihan niyo yung Spanish word na yan, nakatiis, nakaagwanta sa mga problema, sa mga krisis ng buhay natin sa kadahilan ng tumulong ang mga tito, mga tita. And since most Filipinos have no insurance, actually the insurance comes from a loving tito or tita who is not yet married, who takes care of the education of their nephews and nieces, who helps out when the family gets into a crisis mode. I'm talking about crisis because the first reading talks about crisis. The early church was in crisis because they didn't know how to deal with the Jewish rituals. And they didn't know whether to allow certain Jewish practices into the new faith, into the new mode of believing and living the faith that is Christianity. Crisis is very real. The whole world is in crisis. They say that we are going to face food shortages in the coming years because Ukraine is among the top 6 exporters of grain, wheat, along with Russia. They are among the top 6 exporters of wheat. And they cannot export the wheat that is rotting away because Russia is blocking the Black Sea. And nothing can go to Odessa, nothing can go to Mariupol, nothing can leave from the 2 ports of Ukraine. Ukraine is effectively landlocked. And India has a big problem with the heat wave, and therefore they cannot supply for what is lacking. Crisis. We know this very well. We Filipinos have been in crisis for the longest time. Every election time is a crisis. And we who are listening to confessions know what it is. What does it mean to be so depressed, disappointed? And my heart goes out to all of you because we are somehow disappointed. Even the victors are also disappointed. And the losers are even not just disappointed but depressed. And we are in crisis mode. But the good news today has to do with crowning glory. The second reading doesn't talk about the crisis at all. It talks about the crowning glory of the kingdom we all look forward to. In a vision given to us that only the book of Revelations can give us. An image about the kingdom in very, very clear symbolisms. A vision that remains, a vision that is our goal, a vision of a united, not a united team, but a universal church, a vision of what we all pine for and long for. The gospel talks about our own version, the scriptural version of that classic Tito and Tita. The Lord promises the advocate. The advocate is a very interesting term because the Greek word is parakletos. Latin is advocatus, the one we call upon. And parakletos is precisely that, parakalein, the one we call on in moments of crisis. But the promised paraclete is not one who is there only that we call on when we are in crisis. The promised paraclete is one who will lead us into all truth. The promised paraclete is one that will guide us. So hindi po ito abogado na nagsasakdal. The root word of abogado in Spanish is advocatus in Latin. Pero iba ang meaning, hindi lang nagsasakdal kung hindi nagdidepensa sa atin. Yan ang banal na Espiritu. At bakit po dapat natin pag-usapan? Sapagkat sa gitna ng krisis, wala tayong ibang panghahawakan kundi ang ating pananampalataya at ang pangako ng Diyos. We are all familiar with crisis. Like I said, there is an impending crisis about water. The next world wars will be fought over fresh water. When China dams up all the rivers, when India dams up all the rivers too, nothing is left for Bangladesh and all the rest of those who belong to the southern portion of those who own the big rivers. There will be a crisis of major proportions, including here. Economic crisis, gas crisis, food crisis, the pandemic crisis. Now, what do we make of this? The gospel passage, very short, that we read today, is part of what is known by biblical scholars as the farewell discourse. And part of the content of the farewell discourse has to do with the Lord preparing us for the impending crisis of His death, His passion death, and temporary disappearance from our midst. The farewell discourse prepares us for the crisis of His passing away, of His dying on the cross, of His being buried. And now the good news. We all have our own crisis. That may be part of our bad news for today. But the good news is that the gospel today tells us 3 tools by which we can face the crisis. And I hark back to a very old song of the Beatles, the Words of Love. According to this very short song of the Beatles, let me hear you say the words I love to hear. Words of love. But today, the Lord doesn't give us words of love alone. Words of love are words that don't sound pleasant all the time. They can be a challenge. They are not consoling all the time. They could be commanding. They are not good to hear all the time because the truth is not very, very easy to listen to. And yet, the Lord tells us, anyone who loves me will be true to my word. This word is a word of enduring love. And more than just this, there is proof to this love. And the proof is in what He sends, the advocate, the Spirit, who will lead us into all the truth. And then the last gift that He gives us today is peace. Peace I give you, but not the peace that the world gives. You know very well what is our peace. Our peace has to do with victory, one party over the other. And I wonder if those who won are at peace. I really wonder. I wonder if those who lost are still grappling with the unreality of peace in their lives right now. But whatever may be the case, that is not the peace that the Lord gives us today. Culture, mores, history can be changed. History may change, but not the truth, not the peace that God gives, not the Spirit who is unchanging, the advocate who will entrust you, instruct you in everything. Peace not as the world gives. This is our message for today. How do we encounter peace in our lives? Many times we hold on to symbolic peace. Peace may be doing what we want. It may be buying what we want to buy. Luxury items, things that have no patterns, limited items. Ang definition ng mga kabataan ngayon ng bago, new, is something different, not necessarily something newly minted. So if we have something that is different, walang katulad, signature item, we think we have peace. This is peace as the world gives. They say money cannot buy happiness. I disagree with it. Money can buy happiness for a while, but never contentment. Never the ultimate happiness that the Lord promises. Peace that the Lord promises today is not as the world gives us. It is peace on the inside. I think it was Saint Augustine who defined peace as the tranquility of order. So maybe we can start out in discerning whether we are at peace. Is there order inside you right now despite your loss? Is there order in your family right now despite the differing candidates that you rooted out for in the recent elections? Is there order in your neighborhood because everybody is paying the neighborhood fees or the homeowner's fees or whatever? Is there order in your family because despite the different ideas, you all are united in loving God and serving Him alone? Peace is the tranquility of order. If there is order and tranquility, then thank God for it. This is not the peace that the world gives. This is the peace that we long for. The peace that only God can give. The peace that indeed the Lord gives us today, not only promises but gives us. Peace I give to you. The risen Lord kept on repeating a number of times. In this farewell discourse, He promises that the risen Lord makes good the promise. And today, we have the perfect promise made real, the indwelling presence of the Advocate, the Holy Spirit, who instructs us in everything, even in our disappointment and in our anger, in our depression, in our sadness. Peace that only God can give. This is our wish for you all and myself too. May God bless us all in His mercy.